everyone hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm going to discuss today is, was inspired by talking to a lot of amateur Bigfoot research, Sasquatch researchers in my area in Georgia. People that were interested in the phenomenon, wanted to collect evidence, wanted to prove it, but simply didn't know how to do that. So I did a little investigating myself into how the scientific community, a bear biologist studies a bear or a wolf or a cougar. How do you collect evidence that a cougar's been in an area? These techniques can be used for something like a Sasquatch. If you suspected a Sasquatch of being in a particular area, you can use the same techniques. You don't have to invent anything new. They already exist. So that's what I'm going to talk about. Brief introduction of myself. My name's J.C. Williams. I started a project in Georgia which consists only of myself at this time. I call it the Track Maker Project. And one of my aims, one of my goals is to talk to people who are, again, interested in the phenomenon, interested in not learning about Sasquatch, but learning about techniques that are tried and true to collect evidence, again, that could be used for anything, even a Sasquatch. I was in the Army for a few years, Iraq, Afghanistan, and I recently had the pleasure of studying under a man named Dr. James Halfpenny. He's a renowned naturalist at Yellowstone. The man's amazing. He's been doing it for 60 years. Wow. And 5 minutes with him, you feel like a complete idiot. I don't care what you think you know, you're dumb. It was very humbling. That's a wolf track. We were trailing wolves there. And we casted prints and interpreted sign, read the trackways and stuff. It was very educational. Again, something that was a wolf, but the same principles apply to the two-legged variety. The same information, same way you make measurements, the same way you read the sign. You can do that with a Sasquatch. This is a quote from a guy named Alden Miller on a man named Joseph Grinnell. And I'll talk about him later. Joseph Grinnell came up with a method of standardizing note-taking among scientists. Oh, thank you. This was way back in the early 1900s. He didn't like to write, but he decided, since so many biologists were doing it differently, that it should be standardized. And to this day, a variation of his method is still used today. So again, if you're going to find it, if you're going to seek evidence, it's worthless if it's not documented. And by documented, I mean recording details about the find, where it was, when it was, not, oh, well, yeah, I found that it was about June last year, and it was, not being vague, but being specific. That's important, especially if you want someone downstream, a professional, a scientist, to analyze it. They're going to ask you questions about what you found. And the more info you can give them, the more they can help you with an identification. The contents, what we're going to discuss is, I'm going to touch a little bit on documenting track and trackway evidence. I think everybody's just about good and heard about how to document, how to collect hair samples. I am going to talk about DNA from scat. That's something I don't hear a lot about. And then a note on note-taking, where again I'll talk about Joseph Grinnell and the method of observation that he introduced, and a variation of that you can use. Something that was introduced to me by Dr. Halfpenny. It was a technique that he helped pioneer. And then in 1989, there were two men, they were mountain lion researchers. And they had a problem. They're tracking mountain lions, and a lot of times, depending on the firmness of the substrate or the ground, The mountain lion tracks would appear to be bigger or smaller. They were variable if it's stepping in soft mud or sand. So the print might appear larger than it really is. So these two guys, David Felline and Terry Mansfield, got together and came up with a minimum outline method of measuring tracks. This method overcomes the problem of variability in tracks. Now, how many times have you heard, Bigfoot print was found here and it was 20 inches long, it was 18 inches long, 17 and a half inches long. It may or may not have been. How did you measure it? What was it walking in? And that kind of specificity is necessary if you're trying to accurately document a find. It seems easy. You find a print, bring out your ruler, you measure it across, you go, okay, it's this wide, it's this long. But unless you're using this method, your data is going to be inaccurate. It's not right. This is it's probably going to be a little hard to see. This diagram, I based this on a diagram I got from Dr. Halfpenny, who again, biologist tracker. He specializes in carnivore ecology. This would be a cross-section of the foot walking in the mud. Out here, at these points, that's how wide the track would appear in the mud. So if you're throwing your ruler from here to here, and you get 8 inches, yeah, that is 8 inches, but the track really is this big. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. If you put ink on the palm of your hand and pressed it onto paper, and then took your hand and pressed it into mud, the print in the mud would be bigger than the print on the paper. The print on the paper represents the true size of the track. So it would be inaccurate if you measured it from this variable outline. So the minimum outline is down here on the track floor, the minimum outline method. It takes some practice, and what I do is I have some plaster casts at home. I impress them in the mud in my yard, and I practice finding where does that foot start to break and make that track wall. Because down in that depression is the true size of the track. So that's the minimum outline method. Next slide. Here's another graphic demonstrating the same thing. You can see the bigger outline around this Sasquatch track. If you were to measure the outermost outline, whatever number you came up with would be inaccurate. That's not the size of the print. The true size is down here, this inner measurement. That's how big the creature's foot was. So having talked about that, documenting the evidence. What are you measuring? What are you looking for? If you found a trackway, if you found 4 or 5 prints that you determined were most likely left by a Sasquatch. A lot of times I hear certain terms used interchangeably, like stride, like step. And I've had conversations with people and they'll argue with me all day long what it is and what it means. No, they're two different things. I talked to a guy who's a researcher. He measured a trackway that consisted of 4 prints. And he got 4 step and 4 stride measurements. That's impossible. There are not enough tracks there to account for that. So he didn't know. I'll start with the direction of travel, measuring the direction of travel of your trackway. Simple. Using a compass, you can determine the degree measurement of which direction this animal is moving. 300 and whatever degrees northeast, okay? That's pretty simple. The step length. The step length is determined by measuring the distance between the point of initial contact of one foot and the point of initial contact of the opposite foot. So a step is left, right. That's a step. Stride is the distance between successive points of initial contact of the same foot. So, left, right, left. So from my left foot to my left foot is a stride. Like Shakespeare said, 2 steps doth a manly stride make. I said that for a reason, because there's a difference between the two. I put an asterisk there. Step length and stride length can be measured either rear foot to rear foot or the heel, or toe to toe. Neither one is, they can both be used, but you have to be consistent when you're doing it. If you're going to go from heel to heel, do it every time. If you're going to go toe to toe, do it every time. Or again, your information, the data, is not going to be accurate. Gait parameters continue, measuring gait parameters continue.